Going live. Pulling up the notes. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. It is weekly scrap number 165. My guest tonight is Tommy Gunn himself, Mr. Stephen Runyan. 20 years in the fire service, 14-year captain with Wichita Fire, assigned to Truck 2 in South Wichita. He is their hiring coordinator. He is their truck coordinator. He is Georgia Smoke Diver. He teaches and lectures across the country, including FDIC specialist and Wichita Hot instructor. My brother, I'm actually, and I got to say this, one of the sexiest smiles in the fire service. So I am excited for this episode. Welcome to Scrap number 165.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Brother. I am excited. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Tommy Gunn thing that was a secret for a long time, and it was a whole lot more fun trolling on the internet and arguing with some of the folks about their fire tactics and strategies when it wasn't a direct reflection on me. So, I just saw the trend around the country of there were guys that were losing their jobs based upon maybe they got into the bottle a little too much and they threw out their opinion, and that's just something that when you become a public servant, and you work for, whatever local government or department you work for, you kind of give up that right, because now everything you do is a representation of your department.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people don't learn it until too late.
Right. Right.
Is there anything I missed in the intro? Anything you would like to add? Anything I got wrong, basically, is what I like to throw out there.
Nah, man, that's more than enough. Like I said, those are just things. Those are just titles they give you, and just doing the work in the fire service to make my department better and the fire service in general. So
awesome. No, 100%. Of course, audience, please get your questions ready for Stephen and myself. This one should be interesting. It should get interesting. Kyle is in here tonight. He is curating your questions, so please throw them up there. I'm excited about this discussion. What else do I have to say? The 9Ls is out. It's available. It's no longer on back order. It is actually in stock. So if you want to get a copy of the new book, go to firehousevigilance.com and order it. I will sign it. If you just want a copy, just go to Amazon. Either way works. Here we go with the sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Key Hose. Check them out on Facebook, The Hose Experts. And of course, Affordable Drill Towers, home of the Affordable Drill Tower and the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Pump and roll using the Affordable Standpipe Prop. The Affordable Standpipe Prop fits through most classroom doorways for standpipe theory, and then you roll it out in the parking lot and you can pump it. Comes with 6 standpipe valves that can be upgraded to PRVs or customized to what you have in your jurisdiction. Call Steve, 844-55-TOWER, or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Now then, I also love certain organizations, and I love to give them shout-outs, and there's 2 that I want to honor tonight. This has nothing to do with sponsorships, but they are down below, and I want to say Next Rung, man, absolutely makes a difference in firefighters and first responders' lives. Nextrung.org. If you don't know about it, go get involved with it. And the other one that I'm very passionate about, Firefighter Rescue Survey. If you are not a part of this, if your department is not involved in this, go become a part of making the mission, making the metrics match the mission, man. Get involved, firefighterrescuesurvey.com. Okay, that's it. Out of the way. Focusing on Stephen, there's a lot of people here. The man, the myth. My man crush says Justin Fraze. Ryan King said, awesome, the man. So people are logging in. they're dropping their discussion. Excuse me. I'm getting over what everybody seems to be getting over right now. So, Stephen, I'm starting off with the amount of world-class firemen it took to shape your career. I love it when I ask people questions and discussions, and you 100% threw this at me, and I'm like, I love this one. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things to where there's so many different folks that have come into my life at different periods that, either saw something in me or just took the time to say, come on, kid, let me just teach you what I know. And I mean, I know that's the age old thing in the fire service is, you need to pass along or it dies. And the reality of the situation is that, when you come out of the floor, I end up in the fire service, picking it off of a list for the Air Force, and then, going to work in Wichita, you can't pick where you get assigned. And I was assigned to, a slower part, newer part of the city. And, you kind of just get an idea of what you think being a fireman is. And it took, a guy by the name of Robert Turner, who was lieutenant, who, he came out there and kind of just basically challenged everything that I thought. And I mean, led me down so many different paths. And then there's so many people within the Wichita Fire Department. And you look around, and until I started working for FDIC, I didn't realize how many guys from Wichita are, they're out there on the circuit. I mean, they're teaching everything. They are the subject matter experts in whatever it is. So, guys like, Scott Kleinschmidt and Sam Hiddle. And, I've been very, very fortunate to, be a part of, group chats and just, things to where guys spend thousands of dollars to talk to these folks. And these guys would do it for free. They just do it for the love of the fire service. But I'm fortunate enough that, every single day, if I have a question, I have anything that happens anywhere, my entire career, I've had these guys who, they have the practical knowledge. And
right.
That's something to where, there is a lot of people out there who have theoretical knowledge on subjects. And, I'll use Sam Hiddle, for example. Sam takes me along, drags me along to some of these events and shows me the world out to Kentland and other places to teach forcible entry. Well, I think it's really because I speak Hiddlese. So he starts talking about algorithms and mathematical equations and starts talking at a genius level. And then I come in and dumb it down and say, okay, fireman, here's what he's trying to say. But nonetheless, he's taken me along. And it's one of those things to where, I'll never know as much as Sam has forgot about forcible entry. I mean, it's his passion. He knows everything about the makeup of the metal. I mean, from the time they mine it out of the ore, that's his thing. Well, the thing about it is that, I can listen to him I've heard him teach that class a handful of times, and I can regurgitate it. I could get up the next day and I could spit out all the things. I could go down his 2,000 slides that he has that he'll get to 50 of them. But it's one of those things to where I'm just passing along the knowledge. I don't understand it. And the thing about it is that too often in the fire service, you have, we joke around, call them celebrities, or, Kleinschmidt likes to call them the Kardashians. You'll have folks who can get up there and they are the P.T. Barnums of the fire service. They'll get up there and they'll talk. And the thing is, they're bringing great content. So it takes nothing away. It's just one of those things to where, for me, those guys, I'm not ready for the follow-up question on the type of metal based upon how shiny it is, So, I've just had a tremendous amount of people, and I've been lucky enough that, I've had a guy by the name of Doug Winter, who I was way out in that slower part of the city, and one day called me and said, hey, do you want to come ride in my truck every day? And that's the thing, is my entire career, I've spent almost no time on an engine. So was in a time where Wichita had got a new fire chief, Chief Ron Blackwell had come back to Wichita, that we were his first recruit class back. Now, some people on the East Coast will know that name because he was the PG chief. So he leaves Wichita, retires out of Wichita, and goes out to PG and is the chief out there. So fire chief job opens back up. He comes back. And when he came back, there was just the start of this, culture change, because just like anybody else, when you get outside of your own backyard, all of a sudden you start figuring out that there is a lot more to this world. You kind of get the blinders off because everybody has their department way. And,
right.
and most of it is based upon, we've always done it this way, and you don't know any different. And no different than the dumbass kid that I was, sitting out way on the outskirts of the city, not going to any fires. I thought I knew, and I didn't. So, Chief Blackwell comes back, and what he did was empower the guys on the job who knew what we needed to do. So started up, our trucks used to be, it wasn't too long ago that our truck companies would be cross-staffed with the squad. And don't butcher it, we call two-man pickups our squads. But
right on.
So almost like a brush truck setup. But, so my whole entire career, I got to watch the change. And so, there's so many people along the way that helped shape, Doug Winter, if he never calls me that day and says, hey, you want to come ride my truck? And now fast forward 12 years later, we're still together. He's my battalion chief. I'm his captain at a headquarters house in the busiest firehouse, one of the busiest firehouses in the city. And so, I mean, our chief back then, Mark Hahn, and all these guys. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of just talent that I've been surrounded about that I had no idea until I got outside of Wichita.
Right on. Right on. No, Brian Brush said something to me in passing, and it's amazing. But, sorry. He said, once you get outside the walls of your firehouse, at your fire department, you realize that the fire service has no walls. And it really was a deep statement, and I love it, and I've passed it. First question coming at you from the audience comes from Chief David Rhodes, and he said, what is your favorite brand of toothbrush?
Well, whichever one I get for free, because my father-in-law is my dentist. So they have an old saying: you can't help it if your father's poor, but you can help it if your father-in-law is. So but no, So it's my wife's in the dental field, and both her parents were dentists, and so that was that. Whatever's free.
I love it. Okay, now this is a topic I really, really was excited about talking to you about. Big thing, hiring and recruiting, and because you are the recruiting coordinator. What was the term? The hiring coordinator for your department, and I want to talk to you about hiring. The key relationship you need to ensure your success in hiring the qualified candidate versus just checking boxes, and what you meant by that.
So. When I made captain, I went down. One of the guys that I spent a lot of time with on Truck One, that was my company officer. He, in short fashion, went from the floor to the department or the deputy chief of operations. So had this relationship with the DCO, and you know how it is. It's like if you're riding on the same machine with somebody every day, and you're making all these fires, and you just spend years together, and you study for promotion together. You just build that trust and that relationship that you can't because as soon as somebody gets in charge, everybody's their best friend. But
right.
You have these folks who were you were tight with before you had something to offer them. It worked out. So I did a short stint downtown and had an office between the fire chief and the DCO, and again. Perspective, much like getting outside of Wichita and just seeing that there is more to the fire service than what's in your own backyard. Doing a little stint down at City Hall will give you a peek behind the curtain and give you a newfound appreciation for those folks that are working down there every day. But it was one of those things to where, I had an opportunity and was down there, and again, just sheer happenstance that. One day I was sitting in my office, and the fire chief, she was gone for the day. Chief Snow, been our fire chief for several years now, and helped us, allowed the people underneath her to help build what we are today. But there was a lady by the name of Pam Pennington from the Human Resources Department that got assigned to represent the fire department. And, it was one of those things to where she was coming to meet the fire chief. The fire chief wasn't there. So pulled her in my office, and we sat down, and, I don't even know, 45 minutes to an hour later, we just hit it off. She came, and I think the critical thing for us is that she came from private industry. So typically what you see in a city employee is if all you ever know is the city, you think that's how it's done. So, in conversation with this lady who, they should build a statue of her outside of one of the firehouses. We talked about, and I just said, she asked me what I thought the biggest problem in the fire department was. And I said, well, to get a job in Wichita, you put a suit on and you go sit down and you go to maybe a couple different rooms and you talk to a panel of people who are going to ask you questions that have nothing to do with at 3 a.m. when the 2.5-story frame has fire showing out of 2 floors, how that person is going to react. And so I just told her, I said, we've there's nothing wrong. I have a college education, and there's nothing wrong with education. It's very important. But making that the thing that, oh, we're going to give these many points for a degree. Oh, you've got a master's degree. It didn't matter if it was in underwater basket weaving. That was what, we were hiring based on what somebody said sitting in a suit in front of them. And a good percentage of the score was from people that they pulled in from all different walks of life in the city. So they'd pull in a cop, they'd pull in somebody from, finance, wherever.
Right.
Well, so I just told her, I said, essentially, I said, well, where do you live? And she told me her address. And I said, that firehouse is full of 30-year mistakes that we've hired. And I said, they're not firemen. I said, there's a difference. There's employees of the fire department, and then there's firemen. And it's one of those things where it's like, you think about it what you want. This is my opinion. And I said, we have a problem. I said, if you hire somebody in the accounting department, that says they can do Excel, and then you get in there and they can't run Excel, well, you fire them, you get rid of them. Well, in the fire department, these are 30-year decisions when we're doing hiring. So she was, I wouldn't say appalled, but she was shocked a little bit. And she just said, how do we fix it? And I said, well, we just scrap the entire process and start over. And so the key relationship that you need to make in your city is you need to sit down and essentially Pam and her team developed the process we have with input from us. Like basically every day, and I'll call her all the time and say, hey, help me out here. Here's what I'm thinking. How do I stay compliant with HR and stay within the, I don't want to get sued. I've got enough lawsuits going every day, it seems like. But it's one of those things to where, so it's HR's process, but that relationship of explaining to them that, hey, we need a process that mimics the job. So what did we do? We started right from the get-go. We scrapped the whole application. We rewrote application questions. So if you apply to a Wichita, I'm going to ask if you have fire experience. If you don't have fire experience, great, you can put NA in the box. But I'm going to ask you, what your favorite fireground tool and why. I'm going to ask you, what nozzle would you use for interior fireground operations and why? All these things. So, we developed it from the ground up. So now when I go on there and, Joe Blow from California comes in, and you read that and they're, you get a little bit of a peek into who this person is. Now, is it always accurate? No, but it right from the get-go, that and switching, you have to keep up with the times. So gone are the days of, you emailing me and telling me about a person. So developed an e-reference where the second that you apply, I'll hit send and they'll get an email from me, whoever your references are. And I've got pointed questions. How confident are you that this person could drag you out of your house? How confident are you could do, in the list of things? And what's really telling is, and it's happened a handful of times, is that if I said, hey, Corley, I'm going to put you down as a reference. You're like, yeah.
Absolutely.
9 out of 10 times you're going to say great things. I'm not going to ask you if you're not going to say great things. And you would be surprised where somebody would put maybe. Could this person do this?
Maybe.
And it's like, if the person that you're picking as your reference is a maybe, like I've got questions. So application, redid that. And, it's one of those things to where it's nice to be able to kind of see what people say, because there's an opening and, there's been guys, that they've had, I've read some references that if anybody ever said one of the things that they said about this person in this reference thing, I'd frame it on the wall. And, there's a laundry list of them. So the application was important. And I spend a tremendous amount of time. And for anybody out there that thinks that I won't find whatever you posted 10 years ago on Facebook, I'll find it. Like if it's out there, because I'm going to do, it's one of those things to where I look at it as a heavy responsibility that I get to, select who the next Wichita firemen are. So we start with the application process, and you just have HR involved in everything along the way so that because we're in a world of what? We're in a world of hurt feelings and cancel culture and all this other bullshit that, there's in the fire service, there's no room for it. I mean, it's one of those things to where if I'm hiring somebody to be, in any other industry, I don't have to worry about it. But this is the life safety business. And so I look at it as I'm a company officer, I'm a captain on the floor, would I want this person walking through the door of my firehouse? Because these guys, we're not a big enough, we have 23 firehouses. So I'm gonna see all these guys or gals that we hire. And it's one of those things to where, so I take it very serious. And so what we've done with the process is that developed it to mimic the job. So now when you come to Wichita, and you apply for a job, you're going to come out and you're going to show up in PT gear, and we're going to get after it. I mean, we're going to run the 1.5 miles for time. And if you don't make the run, your interview's over. I mean, the day that you start the fire service, you should be theoretically in the best shape possible. So, we've got a whole panel, I've got a whole team of people that work hard, and we put a lot of time in doing this, but, so we do the run. And then we've got, I took half of the smoke diver obstacle course, and just implemented it into Wichita because it touched all the things when you're doing the O course at smoke divers to get into smoke divers, it's looking for the exact same thing, and the design and everything else. So I didn't have to develop again, somebody that shaped a lot of my career, a random meeting with David Rhodes, picking him up to come teach in Wichita. I'm his liaison, pick it up. And that 9 years ago, whatever it was, that changed the entire course of my fire service career. So, I've just had these just world-class mentors that have hammered this in. So I just take what everybody else has taught me. And so when I talk all these things that I've come up with, they're not mine. All they are is things that have been around for hundreds of years in the fire service. There's nothing new. They just come up with different catchphrases to
add a letter at sometimes. Now I want to dig in for a second and ask you a couple questions on, without giving away anything, what's some of your favorite answers you've heard on some of those questions?
I think my favorite one is when they talk about they're going to use the fog nozzle because they'll put it to a full fog and that will give them protection inside the house. And things like that. And don't get me wrong. Some of them work for fire departments that it's like, again, they heard that somewhere.
Left for life.
They want to come up with a good answer. But yeah, you've seen a lot of it. It's kind of funny when you see the favorite fireground tool is the chainsaw, because it'll just, and I'm like, hell yeah, as a truckie, I'm like, it's a great answer. But it's funny because, instead of looking for a certain answer, you just throw a broad topic out there and let people go. Right. And it's funny because I've seen answers where it's like, I hadn't thought of that, or I see their take on it. And it's one of those things to where now the most important question is, and because it's on the application, anybody can go apply right now. I'm not giving away any of the secrets, is I ask the question, and this one comes up every single interview, and I hammer it because this is probably if there was one thing that I was going to make a decision based on, is I have you rank these 4 things, 1 through 4, 1 being the most important and 4 being the least. And that is your own safety, your crew's safety, citizen safety, and property. Now, up until just this last process, we always required EMT before you could apply. So in EMT, what's the first thing they teach?
Oh yeah. BSI
seen safe. And I get this answer.
I'm number 1.
If I'm not safe, I can't help anybody. And so I always counter with, and so I put that on there, and a majority of the people will put your own personal safety. And for me, that's one of those things to where I'll address it in the interview, and I'll just tell them, when they say your own safety, I'll say, okay, who's the most important person in the entire world to you right now? And most of these 18 to 22-year-olds, they're like, "My mom," and I'll say, "Okay, Haley, and Taylor show up on truck 2 tonight and your mom's trapped in that fire." I said, "Do you want me to worry about my safety first, Taylor's safety first, Haley's safety first, or do you want me to worry about your mom's safety first?" And you just see, and you just throw it out there, and you see them come to the conclusion that I want them to do, is that, listen, we are here only for the citizens. Everything we do every day, everything, our tactics and strategy, everything revolves around search. And that's a hard thing. And I tell them, people be like, "Well, you got to be safe, whatever." And I'll say, "Hey, safety is achieved through knowledge, skill, training, and experience, not for making rules, not for saying you can't run on the fire ground, anything else. Safety is not having a safety officer outside micromanaging everything. Safety is by being good at your job."
Hell yeah.
And so for them, I'll say that, and it's one of those things to where they go, I totally see what you're saying now." Because, and I've gone as far as, we had the city council out. We brought all of our city council members out for a day in the life, bought them helmets, put them in gear, and I ran the search portion. So we have a single wide trailer out at the training grounds that we've basically mimicked a ghetto house. The rooms are stacked full of stuff, everything else, but it is a simple layout. In the front door, living room to the left, kitchen to the right, bedrooms are all at the far end. I mean, I walk them around it ahead of time, and I talked to him, and I said, "Let me preface it by saying that I will burn every house on the block down as long as I get them all searched." And I started off, and I love to hit them with it. And I just said, I said, "I'm okay with burning every single house to the ground as long as I get as long as I get it searched." And I mean, there was some eyes, and I remember Chief Snow standing in the back. And when I told them I'm okay with burning every house to the ground, her eyes were, I mean, I could have given her eye exam for the year, because she was like, "Oh, I've made a grave mistake." And then I said, I don't care about the property. I said, will we do a lot? Absolutely. We're prideful people, firemen by nature. We do not want to lose. So are we going to do everything we can to save your property? Absolutely. But I wanted to just let them know that everything we do is around search. I mean, that's it. There's no other reason to show up to the fire. I mean, if it's just putting the fire out, or Chief Blackwell used to say, "Well, it's when it's a grass fire, well, it's grass, it'll eventually go out." Well, I tell people all the time, it's like, it's just hard. It's hard to get that buy-in, in the fact that it's like, they're going to bulldoze. If that house got enough, they're going to bulldoze that house. So I'm not doing my tech, and the common misconception in the fire service, there's things that you can ask at training classes and things like that, predicting the answer. And when I always tell people, I said, "Well, what is the first line stretched for?" And they'll say, "Put the fire out." So wrong, it's not. And that's the common misconception. The first line is put in service to confine the fire for a search. So if you put the fire out, people are always like, "Oh, you put the fire out, everything gets better." That's not true. Because, I mean, you think about it, what happens before we've applied any water to the fire? The interior of that house is predictable. So, we obviously know that we're going to have the thermal layering, everything else. It's predictable. We know what it is. The second that you open that nozzle, you're putting the fire out, everything else. You're wearing $5,000 worth of gear that you're not feeling any of that. If there's somebody 10 feet away from you who is on that ground, and you just sent every bit of that steam down on top of them, what did we do that for? Did we do it to put the fire out and save the house that's going to get bulldozed, or that they are going to get an insurance check for next week? No, we did it because that's what we've always done. And so for me, that's one of those things to where we hammer in the search and right from the get-go, whether it's on the application or during the interview. And I tell them, when there's people that want to sit there and argue, I'm like, "Hey," I said, "this is not the military. This is not a draft. No one came to your door today and drug you in here and said, 'Hey, you have to be a Wichita fireman.' No, you want to join us. And I told you right from the get-go that I'm going to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for our organization. And it's one of those things to where it's like, as long as I'm in charge of it, that's how we're going to look at it, is that, if you're not here, and I ask them a question in the interview that, when you take an oath here, it's to put the citizens and our fellow firemen's lives over your own. And at several points in your career, you're going to be faced with situations where living up to that oath could mean injury and or death. And, and it was easy to get that through HR, because all you got to do is pull up, in Illinois, there's a lawsuit going on where if you're not doing the industry best practice, I don't care if you're the fire department, I don't care if you're whatever it is, if you're not doing the industry best practice, which in several cases is, extending a search. And if there is a room around that house that can be vest and searched, and that person dies and you didn't do that, we are a country of litigation. And so all I had to do to say to HR was, listen, here's 3 lawsuits going on in the country right now based upon us having employees that showed up in a fire truck and everybody expected them to be firemen. So there's a case right now that just happened. I saw it hit on CNN, I think on the 5th, where there's a mom that's trying to figure out what's going on because her 2 kids died in the fire. Well, there was a primary all clear given, and the fire chief said, well, it was they investigated it. It's impossible that they were able to search that. They didn't search it, but they gave a primary. So, I mean, it's one of those things to where I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the men and women that are coming on the Wichita Fire Department, because that's all I can control. Yeah, but making sure that they understand up front that, listen, this is about them, not you. And I tell them, I say, hey, that answer that you gave where you ranked it your safety and then your crew and then the citizen, that will get you a job on 1,000 fire departments from California to New York. And I said, but it won't here. And I said, and if that's not how you feel, we can shake hands. I said, no hard feelings. This is why we're doing this. So, I'm passionate about it. And I just, like I said, I'm upset at what I call the pussification of the fire service, because I'm sick of seeing, everybody wants to be a fireman until it's time to be a fireman, and it's one of those things to where, I hope that the firemen that are protecting my house when I'm gone, and my daughters and wife, it's like, I want them to have that same mindset. And so, that's the way we're rocking it right now in Wichita.
Nice. No, it's a good insight into the hiring process. Now, how long have you been implementing this, and how much of an impact have you seen from this?
So it's been about 3 years now. And like I said, the process has evolved. I mean, I've changed some things, and, like I said, we added in the run at the beginning, and, so recently we got a $10 million SAFER grant to add 42 positions. So all of the typical timelines that I had, because typically we do a couple recruit classes a year. So you had plenty of time. I'd have months and months to interview folks. And I just keep a running eligibility list. So you interview with us, your interview is good for a year, and you make a list, and, and boss calls me and says, hire 20. I just go 1 through 20 based on your score. So, and the thing about it is with the interview process is that the questions we ask, it's all in PT gear, and some people just can't follow the instructions, and they show up in a suit. And I tell them, I say, hey, everything's a test. I was like, did it say anywhere about wearing a suit? It said, wear PT gear. And the interview that you get after you exhaust somebody. So after they've run a mile and a half and they've completed the O course, and, they know they're being timed and they're getting after it, you just get when they're tired, you just get a much more relaxed, because some of these kids, it's the first interview they've ever been to, and so up until recently, it's been slow paced, everything else. Well, we took a bridge out in the middle of the city, so they opened an additional firehouse, and then we dropped that SAFER grant. So trying to come up with 53 people in a short amount of time when we've already been hiring. I mean, I just hired the 4th class of this calendar year, which is, double what we typically would do. So we just recently dropped the EMT requirement, And I'll be the first to say I was flat wrong, because I was always of the mindset that requiring the EMT just, it did two things. One, I did away with the cognitive testing as far as, fire team test or any of those standardized tests, because I remember when I went through it, I thought, well, this is dumb. And then I started getting the results back, and there was no way for me to, they brought no value to the process. It didn't reflect, somebody that got a 70 on the mathematics comes in and they walk through and you're like, holy cow, like you're, Adonis just walked through the door and well-spoken, everything else, didn't take a good standardized test. So part of the process, part of the reason why I wanted to hang on to that EMT was you had a little skin in the game. And then if you can pass the EMT course, you'll be okay with, the tests in the academy and
Sure.
any sort of testing there. So I was against it. And I think maybe, I fell to my own thing that I hate is, well, that's how we've always done it.
Right.
That's the way we've always done it. So we recently dropped the EMT. And so, in a span of about 10 or 12 days, I've got triple digit applications.
Oh, wow.
And so I have what they call first world problems, my friend.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So
Now
we've been hammering through them.
I got to throw this at you because it's come. There's been quite a few coming. I don't know who Johnny Tsunami is, okay? But I got to read some of these because they're pretty good. And I think I doubt you'll appreciate them. But I'll just go through them one at a time here. Is your camera's focal length turned way down, or are you really that scrawny? That's number one. I'm hoping you guys appreciate the sarcasm, but do you have plans to start lifting weights again in the future, or are you going to continue only doing cardio?
Yeah. I'm
Sorry.
old.
And finally, and this is the last one I'll do. Are your arms that small, or is the mug that big?
Yeah, I think the thing that sacrificed, well, I actually have a legitimate excuse, is that my local YMCA right down the street from my house got destroyed by a tornado. So now it's one of those things to where, it's a little bit of a drive and everything else, but yeah, it's always just because I hang around with such big Neanderthals that I work with. Cause I'm very blessed to, it doesn't take much to be a captain when you have a bunch of studs that you work with, and my crew that I work with now is just
Doberman's just barking, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm definitely the worst fireman on my crew. So
I hope you take it with the joking. I don't know who Johnny Tsunami is. I'm assuming he knows you. So
I don't know who that is either.
Oh, okay. I figured it was like a Tommy Gunn deal. So I really did.
No. This is great.
It has to be somebody who was I thought it was somebody you knew that was picking on you. That's the only reason I read. That's the only reason I read them out loud.
For sure.
Because
listen, you're not going to faze me. It's fine.
Okay, fair enough. I wanted to dig in on are you advocating holding water? Like, can you dig in on that a little bit? Because
yeah. Absolutely. And I think that I'll just say that anything that I'm talking about is just directly on the fact that based on our staffing and our everything else. So if I'm out in rural Kansas and it's me and one other guy and we pull up on scene of a house fire, putting the fire out is without a doubt, however you can do it, is going to be the best thing for that situation. So I'm fortunate enough that, I'm dropping 3 engines, 2 trucks, a rescue, 2 squads, 2 battalion chiefs. And especially being in the Corps where I'm at is, I have a bunch of high level guys who are going to get the job done efficiently. And then coming in right behind them is another bunch of all-star. I mean, I'm just surrounded by great crews and everything else. So I'm not advocating holding water. I'm just saying that the thing about the fire service is that, we've started with that. It's all about me. And that here, I'll give you the perfect example.
Okay.
People, when I was younger in my career, I remember, everybody always hammered, what are the 2 benchmarks is everyone goes home and the fire went out. And I remember one time I was in a class with Scott Kleinschmidt teaching, and we were doing one with one of the rural departments around us, and they have 1 firehouse. And he said, guys, he said, I'm here to tell you right now that if your two benchmarks are everyone goes home and the fire went out, we can sit right here at this table. The house across the street can catch fire. And if we don't move, will we accomplish those two things?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And the answer is yes. If we sit right here, every one of us is going home except the homeowner, and the fire's going to eventually go out. So what I'm saying as far as the first line getting stretched for extinguishment is that it should be to confine the fire for a search. So if the truck crew or rescue crew is making the second floor to go get a search, that crew should stay right there on that line, stay right by those stairs and protect those stairs for that search. So it's got to be a conjunction thing. And I mean, it's one of those deals to where, and you see it at smoke divers. I mean, Smoke Daddy always talks about, to drop that boat anchor. So we'll see it. And I've run these drills in my own department, and don't get me wrong. I mess up at every fire. I mean, I make mistakes. I'll come back. Now, if you were watching it, would you see, or would anybody know if I didn't say anything?
Right.
Probably not on some of them, but it's one of those things to where I'm always looking at it. And so, let's say you're an engine company, it's just pulling up straight. Now, let me preface it by saying, I don't ride an engine. This is all theoretical and watching some of the best engine crews in the world do it around me. But it's one of those things to where you see it where they'll come in, put the fire out, and then what happens? They'll just sit there. They're just breathing air. The fire's knocked down. We're going to check for extension. And the whole time, in this training scenario, there's a victim laying in the corner. So like they talk at smoke divers, if you're a one-man engine crew, the second you knock that fire down, drop that nozzle and search the room that you're in. Where are the victims in the most danger? They're right where, as close to the fire where we talk about searching back from the fire. So the same thing goes, and you'll see it typically, if we run with 22s a lot down south and those guys are high speed, but it's like, if they're back in the back hall, in the hallway, back in the bedroom, putting a fire out, and I come up and bump up to that company officer there, come up to Chad Cox there, it's like, hey, do you have everything from here forward? Yeah, we got it. So I can turn around and focus all my efforts from the line back from wherever he is, because I know that they're going to search that.
They got it covered.
And so that's one of those things to where when I say the first line, it's just one of those things to where you talk about it because it drives good conversation.
Absolutely.
So what's the first line for? It's confine the fire for a search, because we're only there to search. If it was just about putting fire out, we could hire a bunch of high school kids to come in and flow water through they could break every window and flow it from the outside, and the fire will eventually go out.
I really like the whole, I'll go on. Building well-rounded crews, battalions. 3-2-1, you mentioned Kleinschmidt, so the Kleinschmidt methodology, but I really want to touch on building well-rounded crews, the 3-2-1.
Yeah, so and we discussed it a little bit on my way over here, because a while back we were talking about it, and so Kleinschmidt and myself both spent a lot of time at twos. He spent his entire time at ones, twos, fours for 25 years. So going to battalion chief has been eye-opening a little bit, and he was sitting in a meeting with other battalion chiefs, and they were discussing, some stuff that had happened at a fire. Why didn't truck 25 do this? Truck 24 would have done this. Why didn't truck 25 do it? Everything else. And he said it dawned on him, that, we've always, he breaks it up into 3-2-1, and the threes are your all-stars. They're your unicorns. They're the guys that, they're your top dog, your first round draft picks, where like he brings it up, like a three, it wouldn't matter if a three went and applied to be an airline pilot, he'd be the best airline pilot ever. If he went and he was going to be, a surgeon, he'd be the best surgeon ever. Cause it's just, they just have it. They have the intangibles you can't teach. So he talks about 3-2-1, meaning that in every fire department you have the category of three. Well, so he's looking at it. Him and I have both. I manage a bunch of threes now, So don't get me wrong, that has its own problems because you're always having to rein them back in. But I promise you're never having to kick them in the ass. So, as long as they stop breaking all the plates and being so hard on everything around the firehouse, we'd be all right. But so he breaks it into the 3-2-1. And as a battalion chief, he had to figure it out because, like I said, he'd been around a bunch of self-motivated, self-training guys who were just going to excel, the unicorns. Well, getting into it, having a whole battalion, the twos are the majority and the backbone of your battalion or department, however you want to look at it. The twos are your just solid firemen. So, good employees, they meet the standard on everything. You don't have to worry about them, everything else. But if you as a leader or as the chief in that battalion, if you spend all your time trying to make twos, threes, it's never going to happen. You can never influence a two to be a three. A two will only become a three on their own. And some of those folks, I don't have all the God-given ability in the world like some of my guys do, but it's one of those things where it's like, you want to work really hard, you can attain it, but nothing your boss can do, nothing your battalion chief can do by putting in whatever can make a two a three. But if you focus all your time, now the chief himself may not be able to influence it, but you want to spend all your time taking those ones and making them twos. And the thing about it is that you really rely on those, the ones and the threes. There might be a disconnect there, and the boss in that battalion, there might be a disconnect. The ones, for whatever reason, and the thing about it is, I was a one out on that far outskirts of the city until some threes came along and were like, "Hey, why don't you check this out? Why don't you look here? Why don't you look at these things?" And next thing you know, it's like I'm eating it up. They always laugh, drinking the Kool-Aid. It's like I wanted as much Kool-Aid. I had so much Kool-Aid that it was spilling out of my mouth. And so it's one of those things where when he was talking about what it meant to him, as he's in there, he's listening to them argue of why this truck didn't do what this truck would have done. And it dawned on him, he went, they're not the same. You can't expect them to do. You can have an expectation, which is where those twos are. And if they're meeting, what if you're always trying to make the ones or the twos meet up to what the threes do, you're not going to be successful. And so I just thought it was something that, I told him, I said, hey, if the opportunity presents itself, I'm going to just touch on that a little bit, because I thought, like you said, it's very simplistic, but from a battalion chief's role, the more twos that you can have, you're not going to reach everybody. There's some people that are just going to stay employees of the fire service, and they're going to tell everybody they're a fireman. They're going to have the T-shirt and put the stickers on and do all that. But that's one of those things to where, we're starting to see fewer and fewer of those, just with that, and guys like Kleinschmidt and Matt Bowen and these guys that were outstanding firemen who actually gave up, phenomenal spots on the floor to take that next step and be battalion chief, because it's kind of what it takes for the organization to keep clicking along. So
now you said yourself, self-proclaimed, you said you were a one out there on the outskirts of the city. What connected with you and because it is intrinsic. Motivation is intrinsic. What connected with you to say, I want to be a two, or I'm going to be a three?
I don't know what, I think it was just one of those things to where, like Turner at the time on the truck, and then the driver also, guy by the name of Alan Gaddis, who's now a chief on the 11th floor. These guys were just, firemen that came out there to a slower truck and just said, hey, they just, all of a sudden we're going to fires just to go walk, hey, why don't we try this? And just little things. And it was like, all they did was just change my mindset towards things and basically just said, hey, it's okay to be into the job. You know what I mean? Like to enjoy being a fireman and to go that route. It's like, so it didn't take much. It's one of those things where there's plenty of people out there who are in that situation that you're like, oh, that guy's at whatever firehouse. He's, those guys are all slugs. It's like, yeah, I was a slug. It was one of those things where it's like, I didn't know any better because as a rookie, I just go out there and I'm with an older crew, great guys, great guy. Still friends with them. My first captain, small world, I just hired his son this week.
That's
So kid that
go
rode
full
out
circle, full circle.
yeah, and his dad, my captain's dad, first captain's dad, was a fireman on the job. So this third generation. So it all comes around. I just, like I said, I was fortunate enough that those guys saw something in me to say, hey, you know, this job's a lot. There's a lot more to it.
Right.
And so I think it was one of those things, and it wasn't, it wasn't shaming, it wasn't anything. It was just, hey, let's go out and do this, or. Right. And it's one of those things to where there was a lot of people that told me when Turner was coming out there, like, hey, he trains in the middle of the night. Like they say all these horror stories. And then, the guy gets there and I'm like, oh man, I really, he's teaching me stuff, and his older brother was a chief on the job and is the fire chief in a, city right to the south of ours and teaches all over the world. And it's like, they just opened my eyes, just took the blinders off and said, hey, this can be a fun and rewarding job. It's not, and so, like I said, I by the grace of God, I just happened to cross paths with these people, and it just keeps happening where I just keep,
right.
roads and everything else. And now working for FDIC for years and meeting all those folks. And I mean, it just, I swear, I mean, I could die today and would have no regrets. I mean, it's been a great ride.
No, there's a lot of people saying stuff about that. Can't mandate passion and morale. Comes from Leighton Hawkshelling. Just to keep you updated on the Johnny Tsunami story, he claims to know you. He says that you know him, but it's not someone named Doff. I don't know who Doff is, but that's the current. But you have to clue me in the next few weeks when you find out who it is. You have to let me know.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I assume it's somebody using somebody else's name to try to make me think it's somebody. So,
sure.
I'll let you know. I'll get to the bottom of it for sure.
I love it. I really thought it was someone that you would instantly recognize. So I'm sorry for reading all those comments.
No,
but,
listen, read them all.
Okay. Ryan King said it's okay to love the job. 100%, brother. I think that's the whole point there. It is okay to love the job. Coming from Josh Davis, question, any tips or things you've learned over time that you utilize to make your search more effective? VES/split search/ etc. you find more beneficial?
So for me, it's one of those things to where the experience level that I have with me. So right now on my crew right now, I've got two guys who are assigned, my driver and my back end guy, who both were college linebackers. Both are just absolutely gifted studs, everything else. And on top of it, just have been to enough fire, everything else, that for me, I will allow the leash on the guy on the back. It's the thing about it is we're running 3-man truck companies, 3-man engine companies, everything else. So the benefit of working for a department that we average about 500 structure fires a year, 166 square miles with 22 firehouses, you get to do a lot on scene. So the thing about the search deal is that it's tough, because if tomorrow I've got one of our blue helmets that just came out of the academy, that leash is tight. So I'm going to be right there with him, with voice contact. Now, by no means, we're not coming in and doing mama duck, baby duck, hanging on to each other and doing all that stuff. I mean, you talked about the rescue survey. The way I look at it is, if you take a normal single family, 1-story wood frame, and, the line typically goes in the front door, majority of the fires, just how it is. So, we find adults in paths of egress. So if the line's going in the front door and somebody on the 360, whether it's myself or the OV, the outside vent man, which is assigned on every job, every fire is going to get an outside vent man, unless there's just a freak deal, all out search, all out roof, things like that. They're getting the back door and sweeping it. And then if we're taking care of the bedrooms, we're playing the odds on where we're going to, we see the data is there, and data is not everything, but it's one of those things to where it's like, if we're taking care of that, how much, right, what percentage of that house where we find people are we taking care of? So, split search is a big thing. And I mean, it's one of those deals to where, my back end guy, when he knows we're pulling up first, If it's boiling so bad that they're not going to make the push, and that means I'm not going to be able to search out in front of the line, we're going to go to vent. And I mean, we vertically vent on a majority of our fires. It's a great tactic to I mean, immediately you're getting that lift and you're facilitating that search, and making it better for the victims and for the firemen. But we're venting for life and we're venting for fire. But it's one of those deals to where my back end guy's coming off, and he's gonna. I'm making a 360. If I'm getting that Charlie side door, things like that, like he's shooting in on the search. He's gonna tell me where he's starting, everything else. But like I said, he has earned that because I know that his experience level is there. Is it freelancing? No, we're at the same house, 1,200 square foot ranch, whatever. We've all got radios on. That everything else. I know where he is and what he's doing, and so it's one of those things to where, depending upon what the conditions are and everything else, I absolutely want to get in there ahead of that line, because as soon as those engine guys get in there, they just fuck up the whole area. It's just, they make it hot and they burn your ears and do all that stuff. But so to answer his question, it is 100% dependent upon what you have trained on, because if you've never trained on doing a split search and you don't have the personnel around you that have the skill level to do that you can trust to make those decisions, it's a bad idea. So like I said, I mean, I think nowhere does it say. We talk about not getting fooled by the front door. You look at it and you say, hey, if we're searching, if fire tech's going in the front door, do I want to pile in? How many times you piled in behind fire tech and everybody's bottle to bottle and you're trying to crawl over and they're trying to get to what they're doing? It's like, I'd much rather go in that Charlie side door or hop in a window and start my search there. Like I said, we're dumping enough people. And come March 21st, that SAFER grant's going to allow us, we're putting 2 additional truck companies on, and they're all going to be staffed with 4. So we're getting ready to sit down and have a big conversation on how that's going to change, because, when we're riding 4 now, I'll split 2 to the search or 2 to the vent, or, 3 to the search. And if that thing's boiling, that OV needs to start preparing to get that roof opened up, somebody else is going to show up and back him up. The rescue or the other truck's going to show up, and their driver can back that guy up on the roof. I mean, it's very typical for us to put 2 firemen to the roof when they're those outside vent man, because typically, and the outside vent man doesn't have to be the driver. I could assign it to the back end guy. It just tends to fall that way. And those guys team up and they make their own 2-man team on the outside. So as far as the search goes, like I said, I'm here for search, and I'm going to push the envelope, and I'm going to do everything I can because I always tell people, like, you hold your breath. You know what I mean? Right. Hold your breath for 30 seconds. How do you feel? You know what I mean? So, and Chief Pierman on our job always talks about the everything he does at the firehouse, whether it was the timing that he took a shower or whatever he does, seconds save lives. So, you get into, I see these, clean cabs and all this other bullshit that manufacturers are there to sell apparatus, and everybody's after the new buzz term and buzzword and everything else. But, clean cabs and things like that, that's just delaying getting the search started. And the thing about it is, you're paid fireman. You took an oath. No one forced you to do this job. So if that's not your cup of tea, it's against human nature to want to do what we do on most of these fires. And so, I mean, for me, it's one of those deals to where, you've just got to make that decision that everything you do, and you have to train on it. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work with a bunch of high-speed guys who, when I'm in, doing any headquarters paperwork and that, those guys are out training.
Right.
I mean, they're going to do man down Monday, and they're going to do the Denver drills, and they're going to do all that stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you just got to stay on it. And a lot of it's that own, personal accountability there.
Awesome, man. Dude, I love it. I love the message. Trey Strout wants to know, what is the path for Wichita Fire to go from engine to truck or rescue? Like, how do you move between them?
So typically, when you first come out on the floor, which we've started doing a little bit different, we found that, much like my situation, you just can't help where you get assigned. And so how many folks have we missed that didn't have, a Robert Turner show up out there to save the day on something? So what we do with our new folks is when they come out on the floor, we develop the D shift that essentially they're going to work a swing shift, and they're going to spend time in every battalion and every shift. So essentially, like I tell these guys, like, hey, every day's a tryout for you, because today you're at 2A, tomorrow you're going to be at 9B everywhere else. And it worked when I ran the D shift previously. Before we did it with our new folks, it was something to where, like, you didn't like the situation you were in. Well, you went on D shift, and you essentially, you're a roving fireman. So you would work different firehouses all the time. And it was guys that were stuck out at slower places. And then all of a sudden I had one guy who he worked the first morning he's working at the downtown headquarters house at Ones. The chief called me up and said, "We want this guy." And I'm like, I get it, And so with these new folks, what we've done is that they're going to come out and work through a task book, and they're going to work at every fire. You're going to work at all these different battalions. They'll spend pay cycle, like a 28-day, 27-day pay cycle assigned to each of the battalions, and they're going to work on all three shifts. So they're getting to see, much like I know we've all worked for those company officers that were so bad that you learned, as I learned as much from some of the bad company officers that helped me say, hey, don't ever do that. Yes. Don't ever fucking be that micromanaging guy, because I remember how it felt. And it's like, so the path to get into these other, the specialties is, so for the rescue, they do an application process, an interview, and then all the training and stuff like that. They do an academy, and same with the truck. So there's truck coordinators. We have one truck chief, Matt Bowen, and then we have a couple truck coordinators per shift. So myself and Brubaker on A shift. So what we do is we'll do a truck academy. So in the springtime, we'll do, because we're going to be adding one slot to these trucks to make them 4 each, and then we're adding 2 additional trucks. We'll do a whole truck academy. So you'll have everybody. So we'll set up the modules. You'll put in for it, and then go through that truck academy, and you'll go to Sam Hiddle's Through the Lock forcible entry class, and you'll go through, whoever, Nico McBee will teach you some search or whatever. So you'll just go to whoever that go-to guy is, because the thing about it is that you want consistency. And that's what we've developed in training with, even through the academy, is that you want the same message. We used to say, all right, you had one training instructor, and then somebody from each shift came out and taught. Well, today I teach something. I'm like, hey, we're going to split search. We're going to do this. And then you come in tomorrow. Corley's the C shift guy, and he comes in, and I start doing that. And you're like, whoa, what the fuck are you? Right. What are you doing? Don't ever do that. Well, if you're a brand new kid that feels like you're drinking from the fucking hydrant, and you're told on one day that this is what we're doing, and then the next day you're told you're not. So that's what we've done, is develop that to where, if you want to get on a specialty, a rescue, because we've got 2 rescues, rescue 1, rescue 2, and they rescue 1 takes care of a lot of the technical rescue, and then rescue 2 will do a lot of the hazmat. But they're cross trained so that, if when they're backing each other up when they show up. And then you have outside team members. So like my driver, he's on the rescue team, he's a diver. So if a submergent comes out, well, we're going to roll on truck 2 to that, because he's going to show up and do his rescue stuff. So we've got academies for that. And then you become, if you make it through the training and everything, you're signed off and good to go. Then you make a roster, and then you look for, you try to make your way to earn a spot, because I'm a big fan of permanent positions and earning those spots. So, the guys at my firehouse, they ride, I have the same guys in the same spots almost every day, because my old battalion chief, Mark Hahn, he used to say, why does the calendar dictate who's riding what? And there's something to be said for being, having an idea of, if Jared Case, my driver, he'll go jump on the squad or engine. If I'm off, they'll other guys will jump up in there to get so that this guy doesn't lose his skills of driving the truck because Case is there every day. So, right. That's one of those things to where permanent positions are big because, I always use the analogy of the Kansas City Chiefs, my favorite team, looked good last night. Patrick Mahomes doesn't take a series off because, it's not fair. This guy needs to, that backup's right there and it's on him to stay ready. And he can stay ready through training and everything else. But when it comes to game day, when the game's on the line and with us, it's not a game, it's people's lives.
Absolutely.
So I always feel like you want to put your A team out there. And like I said, I've got a crew full of A team guys. They're waiting in the wings. They'll get their shot. So
I do love it. Now, one question coming at you. It comes from Kyle Romigas, Mr. Engine Company Resurrection. And he wants to know, can you expand in more detail about the times that the engine company made conditions worse by opening the line?
Well, yeah. So I could pull up some pictures of my ears melting off where I decided that while we're getting the search done, where I just decided this ear was going to melt and not this ear as I'm holding it down. So no, I like to hang a lot of shit on, old engine truck, everything else. But no, like I said, I'm blessed to work around some just phenomenal. I mean, Keith Neiman and those guys that they teach engine company stuff all over the country. And so, yeah, no, I like to give those guys a lot of shit, but I definitely do like searching in front of the line because, it's it's just a much more conducive environment for not melting my ears. So
before it hits, I get it. No, I don't want to ask the question. It was a good one. So we have a thing is new thing for the scrap. It is the Vigilantes question of the week. And basically, the Vigilantes is a private group that you can belong to that gets to ask insight, scoop, and etc. And the Vigilantes question of the week comes from Ryan King, who is also a smoke diver, Oklahoma smoke diver. And he wanted to know, what benefits did the smoke diver program have on you and how you look at the future?
Oh, well, I learned a lot about myself in that 6 days, and I'd been hanging around with Rhodey and the fellas at FDIC for a while, and was kind of getting a little bit older, and Hollander finally said, "Listen, you're the only one hanging out in this hotel room that's not a smoke diver. Like you've got to go do it." And I'm super glad I did because it's physically it's tough. But mentally, what it did for me was just, I mean, they put you in the most stressful situations ever, to where I strengthened my mind more than anything in that week, and so it taught me some perseverance and some, you don't realize what it teaches you until you get in those situations. I mean, it's one of those things to where you go through all this stuff, but when you run into it in the real world, all of a sudden you realize, I'm not that tired. Like, you go through a couple bottles at a fire, or you go to that second fire of the day. It's like, that's lunchtime at smoke divers. So what it gave me, besides just, opening the door to having, access to some great people that you can always reach out to that aren't in your own organization for the most part. It just gives you that you're around. It gives you that recharge, much like you listen to Chief Halton or some of those guys talk about what FDIC is, where you go out for the recharge. Smoke divers is a lot the same way, and not every I work with. There are 150 smoke divers that I work with in Wichita. Just a lot of them haven't gone down and got the T-shirt. So, as far as for the future, like I said, it's another relationship that getting into smoke divers has expanded. And I mean, I've made lifelong friends and guys that I'd do anything. I'll travel halfway across the country on my own dime just to keep the thing going, because I know what it did for me. And that's, again, people always say, knowledge is power. Well, knowledge is only power if you share it.
Right.
And so that for me is what smoke divers. And you catch a lot of shit, and it's hilarious. I mean, guys back home making Kansas smoke driver stickers and stuff like that, and I love it, because it's one of those things where it's like, hey man, it's waiting on you, and it's nothing special. It's just a group of guys who want to go down and just make themselves better. No different than any other training you're going to, and it's nice to see across the country that conferences like Wichita Hot, I'm a board member of, and you love seeing the message get spread, by guys who are going to fires, because like I said, coming back to the practical versus theoretical, I was taught early on, especially, Chief Rhodes talks about it, which, he's going to be taking over for Bobby Halton as the editor there for fire engineering. So super well-deserved there, and he'll do a great job transitioning them into the future. But you always got to check the resume. So people that don't know me, I could work for, a one firehouse department in Antarctica and sit up here and talk about all this stuff. So anytime I see an article come out, before I want to start arguing and get mad, everything else, I'll just pull up and look at, Antarctica Firehouse 1 and see how many fires they make. If they make 12 fires a year and they've got 3 shifts, how many fires did that guy that wrote that article actually go to? So I always try to just keep in mind that, I'm going to look and see, who's the one that's coming up with this, and are they just trying to get their name out there, sell a class, get on the circuit and everything else? Do they want to be that, do they want to be that celebrity, or are they really here for the right reason? So that's always something I've just been told, and it's held true, because there's been times where before anybody knew who Tommy Gunn was, I'd troll those guys that wanted to tell me about, flowing water from the outside's the way to go, or things like that. And then you go look, and it's like, well, you don't actually go to any fires. So what you're basing this all off is bullshit. And, I call it for what it is.
And I bet it was fun as Tommy Gunn. I can't.
It was.
No, I love it. Okay, I always love to know book or books that you think firefighters should be reading.
So I'll have to say that I am more of a podcast,
Sure.
social media, article. It's one of those things to where I'm not as bad as Sam Hiddle about the shiny squirrel that goes by, but I will take the cliff notes out of a book, or somebody that will teach me about a book they read. I did for the first time in a long time, because I always laugh, the guys that are in a group chat with me, and Hiddle always likes to give me shit. And he goes, I don't know how you find it, but I mean, I'm addicted to my phone just like anybody else, but I actually read a book recently, and it was written by a former fire chief in Wichita. So the book is called Memoir of a Fire Chief. And it was a lieutenant on the Wichita Fire Department who went from lieutenant to fire chief overnight.
Damn.
And he gives some insight, and I've never actually got to meet him, but he wrote this book a couple of years back. And obviously, because it's based in Wichita, and I know some of the name, like,
sure,
it's like, I know it, but some of the background he gives about the baggers and, a secret group of fire chiefs back in the day who met, from all different cities, and they were trying to figure out, how to do things and, infiltrate the international fire chiefs and all this stuff. And, it talks about Bruno back in the day when, and all these plans that these guys had. They were real firemen. And so it's kind of interesting to see how what happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the same things happen today. And I mean, they were facing the same problems then as we are now.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting to go back and and read that. And it, like I said, it being in Wichita, it adds a little bit to me, but I can promise you that no matter what rank you are, there is something in that book. And it's what I liked about it is that it's thin, it's nice and thin.
Fireman, you ride a truck, so that makes sense.
Right. Yes. There is picture. Well, actually, if you see the picture in the book, the boat there says "Life's a bitch." So
right
that got me right from the get go. A boat on fire and life's a bitch. So yeah, it's a good book. But it's one of those things to where I do my fair share of reading and listening and everything else. But I just I'm like if you remember that movie Short Circuit, where number 5 just wanted the input, and he's flying. That's me, and I'm when I find something I like, I'm gonna read it, watch it.
Number 5 is alive. No, but I like it. I really do like it because the personal connection with your department, man, it really is cool.
Yeah, no,
I mean, without a doubt,
super cool. And it's one of those things to where in there, I look at a lot of the things he did. He went from lieutenant to fire chief, and then everybody that he beat out for the job, he gave them whatever their strength was that got them to be a finalist, but they didn't have the total package. He took everybody that he beat out for that job and he put them in as the DCO, the support service chief, whatever chief it was. He took all those guys and said, "Hey, you are the best at what this is," and said, "Hey, come help me run this thing." And so, and I also like it because the guy was super young and he refused to wear, conform to the uniform policy. He wore tennis shoes with his suit to work. And they called him a kid. And so it, being a little bit younger myself in the fire service and making captain pretty early on, I kind of draw some parallels to it. And it's just a neat story. And like I said, it's a short book. So, there's no coloring book in it, but that's the only thing it's missing.
I love it. All right. We have a thing. It is the next 5 questions for firefighters. The answers are completely your opinion. There is no right or wrong, and the points are arbitrary, assigned by the viewers and myself. So what I need to know is Tommy Gunn, a.k.a. allegedly Stephen Runyan. Are you ready for the next 5 questions for firefighters?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Number 1, what single characteristic makes the difference between a run-of-the-mill firefighter and the top-tier, go-to, badass firefighter?
Passion. For sure. Just that you can't coach it. You just, it's what it is. You can't force it. They've just got to want to do it themselves.
No, that's strong. Is that something you think you found a way to identify in the hiring process? As much as you can?
So in the hiring process, you're hiring on the intangibles you can't teach.
Right.
So in this last group of folks that we hired, we have everything from professional cage fighters to collegiate athletes to a guy who was a Team USA sprinter who ran 100-meter dash in 10 seconds. So I look at it as if somebody can achieve those things in their own life, and they've had the discipline to go play college sports or whatever, those things tend to, at 3 a.m. when you're on that tough fire, that guy that's been in 2-a-day practices, everything else, I can take those intangibles and I can't, but Clint Gifford and the guys out on the training crew, they'll channel all of that natural ability and those intangibles to be a fireman.
One word answer: passion is awesome. Passion is max points, period, just from saying it. But then when you expound upon it with everything else you're going through with your hiring process, man, 100% max points earned. Number 2, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice as a rookie, what would it be?
Just shut the fuck up and listen. Really, you just don't know what you don't know, and it's one of those things where it's like, I wish I could go back. I wish I'd have written down half the stories that, I try to pass them along now and try to get the guys that told me those stories to come back. And like I said, just listen. There's so much to soak up from guys that have actually done it and been doing it for 2 or 3 decades that, listen.
No,
2 ears and 1 mouth.
There, that is my kid is just finished his rookie year at OKC Fire Department. And I say my kid, he's a grown man now, you know what I'm saying? But he'll always be the kid. But no, it is the piece of advice I would go back and give him, you know, and give him. But dude, 1,000%. Number 3, what is your favorite training drill?
So anything search, just anything search, whether it's vest for time, it's just one of those things to where, honing that in and watching the pace at which somebody does something, and just, and not setting them up for failure. Everything doesn't have to be, there's 5 people hanging out a window on a 2-story in the middle of a tornado. Just being good at the basics. And like I said, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that was hammered into me young was that safety is a relative term. So what is safe for my crew to do may not be safe for your crew to do. So don't sit down the street stage and judge what we're doing, because I can assure you that nothing that is happening on with our fires is the first time that we've done it. You look at the New York City Fire Department having those guys bail down the window and pull them out. You think that's the first time that they've done anything like that? Absolutely not. Is it safe for me to go do right now? No. No. I mean, would we do it? Sure. Is it safe? No. But that's the thing, is that safety, people think safety, which that's that old thing. People hide behind it. So somebody that's not good at their job, it's not safe. It's not safe for me. Well, that's one of those things where safety is a relative term. So, there's some crews out there like those guys the other day, bailing down that window, no problem. That's something that they've trained on and they're good at, so
1,000% max points, especially for working in the safety is relative, man. 1,000%. I think that's a message and a drum that needs to be beat, and you cannot beat it enough. Number 4, what mistake have you learned the most from in your fire service career?
Mistake I learned the most from, I would say the lack of situational awareness on a 360. Where when I wore a helmet cam for a lot of years, it made me really aware, because you know how it is, human nature. You will convince yourself that something different happened at that fire. And when I wore the helmet cam, I realized that there was times that I'd go down, the Bravo side of a structure, and my eyes would never look up. There could have been a person hanging out of a window. I could have missed that there was a second story. I mean, all those things. So the biggest mistake I made was just, it was just, I don't know, I wouldn't call it complacency, but just, lack of paying good attention. And that's something that I highly recommend. If you wear a helmet cam, you don't have to show anybody. You don't have to do anything, but go back and put a clock on it. See how long it took you to mask up. How long did it take you to put your gloves on? Seconds save lives. So I think for me, the biggest mistake I probably ever made was not wearing a helmet cam, because I was able to convince myself that, that everything went good at that fire.
Right. No. It allows the self-deception to set in.
Yep.
Which gives the gap set force for complacency to get its little wedge in place. No, I love it, man. Max points. Number 5, heavy fire. Searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Yeah. Search all day. Search all day long.
All right. I figured I knew the answer, but it's still the question. The question is the question. I just like I'd like to know the reasons why, which you've kind of articulated, but go ahead.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, the American Fire Service is built upon saving lives. And the thing about it is that I just want there to be a culture, at least what I can control is my crew, and somewhat of the hiring of the certain type of individual. But I want them that every single time. I mean, if you come to my firehouse, you see this is a picture of the oath that we have from our firehouse that we took. We took some stuff from the museum next door. We've got the Kansas Firefighters Museum next door to our firehouse. And so Captain Minges, you want to talk about a prideful fireman. He's one of the best firemen I've ever known. And we make it a point that it's expect fire, expect victims. No matter in the truck on the back, big block letters, no weak shit. We've got the oath here. I mean, it's one of those things to where no matter where you go in our firehouse, you understand that you never lose sight that we are just there to save lives. I mean, the property is number 4, and it's way down there. I mean, it's one of those things. Everything we do, is built upon saving lives and getting that primary search done as quick as possible. Because, it's like how hard would you work? Would you want you showing up to your family's fire? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know how to put it any different. And that's, there's been plenty of people say it before me, but, expecting fire and expecting victims. I mean, if you keep that mindset, when you show up to that fire, it's not a surprise. You don't turn the corner and like, holy shit, like we turn out, if you come to our firehouse and it's at the majority of the firehouses in the city right now. If you come to our firehouse, we have hacked into the dispatch system with the slave computer, and we've put a TV in every single room, and we put an auto clicker on. And so it's connected to the CAD dispatch center. And so it clicks refresh and it pops up. And if you come by every 7 or 8 seconds, my eyes are kicking up to that TV, and it's looking, because, the call taker in the dispatch center, the call taker that takes the house fire, she might be sitting halfway across the room, and she's going to send it on the computer over to the resource dispatcher. And she may have 3 calls. She may be in the middle of dispatching something else. And the thing about it is that, those dispatch is just like anything else. They're not firemen. So they don't know the priority of things. And so if we see a house fire waiting, it's sitting there waiting to get dispatched. We have bells around the firehouse, we have paging systems, everything else. But you will get is that the second that pops up, somebody's yelling out house fire, and we're rolling out before it's ever dispatched. And so the thing about it is that competition is a good thing. So as soon as, if 22s has it, well, 2s is going to have it, and now 1s is going to have it, because nobody wants beat into their own area. And so the thing about it is that competition drives everybody. So when you're in our firehouse, you cannot go into a room, not the weight room, not my bedroom, the chief's room. Every room in that firehouse has a TV going. In the living room, kitchen area that we have, there's 2 TVs in there that are going with it. So no matter where you're at, you're looking at and every 7 or 8 seconds, it's updating, because we understand that it's one of those things where, if we get out 30 seconds ahead of time, because sometimes we've all seen it where you go back and that dispatcher is busy, or they stood up to switch out, and that fire doesn't get dispatched. Well, guess what? And the thing is, it's not just fires. I mean, you see code blue sitting on there for longer than a few seconds, whatever. You're calling that firehouse and saying, hey, and if that firehouse doesn't have it, or one of our guys roved out to a firehouse way out in the outskirts, and they don't have it set up. So, he's like, hey, you guys see something, call me, because it's one of those things where now it's rare to not see that in our city, because these guys, the passion is there, the culture has changed, and being a fireman is not something that you're going to stay in the closet about. Having your own tools, if you see in the picture behind me, those are all those are all personal tools that go in that deal. Those are axes and Halligans and things like that, because it's just one of those things where we're averaging more than 1 working fire day in the city. So you can expect that fire and expect that victim. And like I said, watching that CAD board, it used to be the old click and play before the computer or before the TVs. There would be some guys that would sit in the computer in the cab and they called it playing the slot machine. They'd sit there and hit the refresh button on that, hoping that they saw a fire, because then they were going to be the first ones there. So we've come a long ways. I mean, it wasn't too long ago in Wichita, where the beginning of my career, where you pulled up and you staged, and the first 2 captains stayed in the engine and was command, and the trucks parked down the street and everything else. And like I said, I'm getting to reap all the benefits of all of my mentors that fought hard and had to deal with all the haters, that hey, this is we didn't start the fire, and this is just a job, and things like the third dayers. So I'm very fortunate. I feel like we're in the glory years in Wichita, and I'm it's not lost on me every single day, because there's a finite amount of times that you get to get on that rig and go to that fire, and I'm gonna soak it up.
Right on, dude. And you're right, like you said, glorious time to be a part of it, right in the middle of it, man. That's awesome, man. And that officially makes it 165 scraps in the books with the Stephen Runyan. If someone wants to get a hold of you, get more information from you, pick your brain, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out on Facebook, Tommy Gunn, or I'm on Twitter. But it's one of those things to where if you can always get me through the city website. You put a job application in, and it gets right to me. So, but no, I mean, it's one of those things to where you reach out on Facebook. My phone number, my cell phone number is out there. I put it out there on everything, because it's easier just to take the direct phone call. So you got something, or if you ever find yourself in Wichita, you want to come by the firehouse, and you're always more than welcome. Come have a meal, come do a ride out, whatever. Twos or any ones, twos, any of the houses. They're more than welcome. Open door.
Love it, brother. Absolutely love it. There we go. The Vigilantes is live. If you want to be a part of it, go to firehousevigilance.com. Join up. Vigilantes question of the week. Ryan King this week threw it at Stephen Runyan. But if you want to be a part of it, every week or every month, excuse me, we discuss a podcast or a book, and we read it together. It's a good time. Man, don't miss out. Join up. Let me see what else we got. Coming up next week, Ron Moore, electric vehicles. Man, we're going to be talking about, that's a huge deal. Just everything about electricity, plus rescue. I mean, the guy's a genius. John Spira the week after that, Sean Duffy, then Joe Yowler, and I'm going to be honest with you. We got a mega scrap coming up, and it's going to be awesome with who's going to be on it. It's going to be all about urban to suburban, and more details to come. It is going to be great. If you know anybody that wants to be interested in sponsoring the scrap, let us know. It's like Key Hose, Affordable Drill Towers. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Reach out to me. Let me know. Other than that, Stephen, thank you for being such a phenomenal guest and giving me your evening, brother. It's been exciting.
Thanks, man.
Audience, I appreciate you. You make the scrap magical. Thank you for tuning in live and asking in-depth questions. I love you all. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tones stay silent unless it's burning. Everybody, stay safe out there.